Look at all that money, oh, the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, well, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison our soil. The plastic made from the resin of hemp is far more durable than the steel we've bent.
It's the biodegradable alternative to the toxic petrochemical derivative.
So I think it's time to form a new industry.
Help heal the planet with a plant you see.
Like Tommy J said, it's the first necessity.
So grind it and combine it with the food we eat.
So many different ways it can lift us up.
Free hemp planet and refuse to corrupt. Free hemp planet and refuse to corrupt. Free hemp planet and refuse to corrupt. What's up?
People got no food, they've got no clothes, they've got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp.
Which questions were going to be asked? And I think 3 million people voted, or 3.5 million people voted. I have to say that there was one question that was voted on that ranked fairly high, and that was whether legalizing marijuana would improve the economy and job creation. And I don't know what this says about the online audience, but I just want, I don't want people to think that this was a fairly popular question. We want to make sure that it was answered. The answer is no. I don't think that is a good strategy to grow our economy. So,
he's a Harvard economics professor and a frequent guest on this program. But we've never had him on, at least as far as I can recall, to talk about drugs. Here's why we're doing this now. He's written a book where he explains what legalizing drugs would save our economy. You ready for the number? $77 billion a year. For comparison, that's the figure that Bernie Madoff admits to bilking investors out of in his Ponzi scheme so they could be all paid back with one quick swoop. Or it's also the 2-year state budget just passed by the state of Wyoming. That means they run their state for 2 years with that money. Professor Myron, thanks so much for being with us, sir.
Nice to be back here.
Break it down for us. You know, we got that figure of 77 million from you. How did you get to 77 billion?
Well, you would get about 44 billion by not spending the money we're currently spending on police for arrests, on judges and prosecutors for all the trials, for prisons and prison guards, etc., for the incarcerations. And you get another 33 or so billion by collecting tax revenue on legal drugs in the same way we collect lots of tax revenue on cigarettes and alcohol. So it's a combination of those two things, and that number puts together the state and the federal, but it gets you what used to be thought of as a big number, although these days it doesn't sound so impressive.
not post Bernie Madoff.
No.
But you know, some people would say, you know, we make a lot of money by incarcerating these people. We've got people in prisons, and that's part of the economy as well. And would we have to lose the jobs of all these guys who are part of the DEA and police officers fighting on the border? Why would you want to eliminate those jobs?
Well, we don't want to create jobs by forbidding something that people can use responsibly. That argument would say we should go back to criminalizing alcohol. It would say we should criminalize food, because after all, if we made food illegal, there'd be billions and billions of people violating the law every day, and we could hire zillions of police to enforce those laws. So that's just not a very effective argument.
It sounds like what you're saying is that we are almost at the same place today where we were back during Prohibition. That we've got a problem, and the best way of solving it would be of getting rid of the prohibition vis-a-vis alcohol.
Absolutely. And, of course, it turns out that one of the reasons that the nation came to its senses in 1933 was because of a big economic downturn, the Great Depression, and they realized that they wanted more tax revenue, and legalizing alcohol, again, was one way to do it. Now, that's not the only reason to legalize. It's much more important that legalization would, for example, get rid of all the violence in Mexico that we've been observing recently.
You know, it's interesting. Kurlikowski, that potential drug czar that we were just showing there, he's one of the few police chiefs who's actually tried to not decriminalize it legally, but make it so that it's like, you know, maybe a slap on the wrist. Yesterday, on the other hand, we were doing a story about some folks in Texas who were putting people in jails for a long time for just having paraphernalia, a pipe, not even the actual substance itself, in their car. So on one side of the country, we have the law being treated one way. On another side of the country, we've got the law being treated completely differently. It's like a piecemeal approach. Is that part of the problem?
Well, that's a part of the problem, but I think there's a more fundamental problem, which is that the law just doesn't make sense. For something that is potentially dangerous, there might be a reason to regulate it. There might be a reason to tax it. That's exactly what we do with alcohol and cigarettes. But we leave them as legal goods because that way we avoid having the underground markets that create corruption, that create violence, that redistribute income to criminals, and a whole set of negative ancillary effects.
Fascinating. What kind of reaction? I mean, you're a Harvard professor. You're not supposed to be writing about stuff like this. I mean, people are going to think you're a stoner or something. I mean, what kind of reaction have you gotten from this, and do you think it'll ever fly?
From economists, I get a lot of very positive response. Economists think about unintended consequences and recognize that a lot of these negative effects we attribute to drugs are due to drug prohibition. Politicians don't want to touch it because it doesn't seem to be politically viable right now, and that's the problem.
That's interesting. Man, I'll tell you what, interesting discussion. I'm glad we did this. Professor, thank you for being with us, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.
Howard, we're going to kick off hour 2, but I want to say thank you to AmericanFreedomRadio.com for being nice enough to put together this conference and helping to make it possible. The people there at American Freedom Radio do an amazing job at what they do at helping to raise the voice of freedom and the marijuana movement. If you like this program, I would encourage you to check out other fare found there. So, Howard, I want to thank you, too, for being nice enough to be part of this special 2-hour presentation. You've brought to the table a couple of other amazing experts. We have Ben on the line now, and Norma will be joining us in about 10 minutes when she finds a quiet phone and quiet spot. And with that said, I'm going to hush my mouth and let the two of you discuss ways that we can help end this global prohibition.
Ben, Howard.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Thank you for your time. Where does life find you at this moment?
Right now, I'm at the computer. I was going to be on Capitol Hill, but I rescheduled, and I'm right now scheduling meetings for next week, so that we can have as many meetings as possible for next week, which is the last week of congressional recess and the congressional district work period. So it's a good time for meetings.
Well, Ben, of course, I know who you are and what you do. I know you're from Pittsburgh, and you've been active in industrial hemp policy now for a number of years. Please tell us, but the audience probably doesn't know. Tell us a little bit about your background and where you are today and where you hope this thing is going to go in the near future.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I get to see Howard a lot on Capitol Hill. I've been working doing advocacy for industrial hemp farming this is going on my 5th year now. So it's really been a wild ride, and it's been very exciting. Before that, I went to college in Baltimore, and I really kind of jumped in head first right after college. I was very inspired by the need for this type of change, and I looked into drug policy, I looked into environmental policy, and I was torn between what was more important. And so industrial hemp is right in the middle of something that is both environmentally necessary, but also socially necessary as well, because this is a policy that just makes no sense at all. Industrial hemp is not a drug crop, but the United States continues to regulate it as a Schedule I narcotic, even though it has no use as a drug. So it's a really ridiculous policy, and I came to Washington with my heart and mind set on changing that, and I'm very excited that now we really are starting to make a lot of big steps towards our goal.
Well, and I know that in our discussions that part of the horsepower you bring to Capitol Hill is the fact that a number of states have taken up resolutions, they passed things through the legislature, ag commissioners in a number of states have signed letters, etc. Tell us about that, how when you go door to door, like I do, up and down the halls of Congress, what kind of horsepower, what kind of political support do you bring into every office to say, this is not some crazy hippie out of the 70s, this is a cold, calculated business. It's a business venture, has nothing to do with drugs. What kind of support do you have coming from the states to help you in Washington?
Absolutely. So the states are actually what's really fueling this entire movement. Is 19 states, 20 states. 20 states have already passed pro-hemp legislation, and so that's a huge talking point. Is this isn't something that I'm just saying. This isn't something that I think doesn't make sense. 20 states agree, and 9 of those states. Those 9 states are Vermont, Maine, North Dakota, Oregon. Actually, there's several other ones. I could list them, but I don't want to get off track. 9 of those states actually regulate hemp. They actually already authorized the Agriculture Commissioner in the Department of Agriculture to license hemp farmers. They are essentially just waiting for the go-ahead from the federal government to grow hemp. These are states that have farmers and they have businesses that all want to grow hemp and have already kind of expressed their support at the state level. So it's really exciting that these states have done that. Most recently, Kentucky legalized hemp farming this year, and we're very excited because the Agriculture Commissioner there, Jamie Comer, was really pushing this, really made this an issue, and this was on the nightly news. This was in the daily newspaper. This was an issue. This became a household issue in Kentucky, and so it's really that state level action really makes this issue, the issue of industrial hemp, real grassroots issue. And a number of other states, Vermont is another state where we work very closely with them, and they actually just recently signed into law a provision of their existing hemp law that says that they can grow hemp without federal government permission. So we're looking at a situation where these states, Vermont has been waiting since 2009 to grow hemp. Since 2008 and 2009, they actually have been working on the legislation, and now they're saying, we don't want to wait any longer. We want to begin growing hemp. We know there's a market for it, and we have farmers that want to grow it. And so it's very exciting that they're continuing to make this an issue on the state level.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, the audience has to know that with the Holder decision 24 hours old, we're still trying to digest what it all means. And Eric, in the first hour, did a good job of helping us with that understanding. What is your take when you read that Holder memo and talking to your compadres in terms of in the next planting season? Do you think moving forward that farmers in these 20 states which have passed it will be able to grow industrial hemp without federal interference for the first time since World War II?
That's a very good question, and I was just talking with one of my compadres yesterday about this. We want to proceed with caution, and the reason why is because in these the memo, first of all, it only mentions Colorado and Washington, whereas we have hemp legislation in 7 other states. besides just Colorado and Washington, but also because it really is really talking about medical marijuana. It's talking about the regulations that are in place. It doesn't address hemp, and hemp would be grown on a much larger scale. We're talking about tens or hundreds of acres of hemp, and so that's something that in this memo they're not really thinking about. However, there are farmers that really want to grow hemp. There's a farmer in Colorado that says that he's actually already growing hemp. His name is Ryan Laughlin.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was written about in I think in the Wall Street Journal. He was quoted as saying that he's already planted hemp. But so we're not really sure how exactly this is going to affect hemp farmers or potential hemp farmers. But we certainly see it as a big step forward, and we're hoping that a similar statement can be made in regards to industrial hemp. Just to say, in states that have already legalized the regulation, they have strict regulations in place. We're hoping that the DEA can officially back off of those states.
Well, more on that guy from Colorado. So did he plant? Obviously, your audience may or may not know this, but of course, industrial hemp on Capitol Hill has always been, until recently, kind of a Cinderella, kind of ignored, and it was a minor part of everything. But yet now, recently, you scored a victory which, for the hemp world, was as big as what happened yesterday. Could you tell us about that vote a couple months ago in the Farm Bill?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for asking about that. Yeah, so I've been working on this issue for a while, and when I first started working on this, I go in and try to get a meeting about hemp, and people would giggle, and at the meetings it was never really taken that seriously. But we were able to build a lot of new support, though, and over the years I've helped gain. We've picked up over 30 new House co-sponsors on the Industrial Hemp Farming Act, which is H.R. 525 this Congress. And so we've really kind of been picking up new momentum, but it really hit a peak and hit a pinnacle and really raised us to a new level during the debates on the House Farm Bill. We had for a while we've been talking about how we can include hemp into the Farm Bill debate. A little bit of background: the Farm Bill is a massive piece of legislation, over $900 billion. Over 10 years, that is passed every 5 years. It's this huge piece of legislation that essentially sets all of the farm and food policy in the United States. And so we saw it as and so not only is it this huge, massive piece of legislation, but it's an opportunity to introduce an amendment. So all of the different agricultural interests introduce amendments. Over 200 amendments were introduced, and we took the opportunity to introduce an amendment to the Farm Bill to allow for hemp farming. And so we introduced, first we introduced our legislation of the Industrial Hemp Farming Act, but like over 200 amendments was actually ignored. Most amendments in the process are actually ignored. But then, during the House Farm Bill debate, we actually introduced an amendment that would allow for research at the university level on the cultivation of hemp in states where hemp is already legal. So in the 9 states where hemp is legal, it turns out that we can't even start researching the cultivation of hemp because having live seeds alone is illegal. So this is a huge step forward for us in just the research of hemp cultivation. And we, against all odds and against our, what we thought, we brought this to the floor. We actually had a floor debate, where we had several members of Congress talking about the benefits of hemp, which was really an historic act in and of itself. But then, the next morning, this was brought to a recorded vote, and we passed the amendment with 225 House members supporting us. And so this is historic on a number of levels. This is the first time it was brought to a vote. This is the first time it's passed. This is the first time members were on record. And so we now have 225 members of Congress that are on record supporting hemp research. And so that is certainly a very historic movement, and it really brought us to a whole new level, and that's why we're so excited about our development, all of the developments, and moving forward and really being able to envision growing hemp in the United States once again.
And I want to congratulate you on the air, again, for all the incredible hard work that you put in over the years to become the overnight success with that ag bill this past summer. And how does now? The larger thing is, of course, that ag bill failed in the House, so it's going to have to be decided over again. Who were the opposition to the farm bill in terms of what reasonings did they give to say we don't want industrial hemp grown in America? What was being said against your bill? I think that would be helpful to our audience.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Yes. So first of all, I want to first say that the Farm Bill, as a huge piece of legislation, is a controversial piece of legislation. A number of representatives don't. It turns out that we have to bring back up the Farm Bill. Actually, we're going to be doing it in just a couple weeks. But it's still very uncertain. The Farm Bill, and I can maybe talk about that further. But I wanted to address the opposition for hemp specifically. It's funny. There was a guy. His name is Steve King, and he's a congressman who he's kind of outspoken on a number of issues, and he's kind of actually lost some credibility since he spoke up against hemp.
I know Steve King.
But so he was the one who was. I'm not sure actually who sent him up there to speak against our amendment. But he went up there and he said, there's a number of things that they're talking about. One is there is a concern with law enforcement. Law enforcement agencies, including the DEA specifically, but other law enforcement agencies, including the Kentucky State Police Association, they have just voiced concerns that they are still skeptical that they think that people will try to use hemp legislation as a way to grow marijuana or as a way to fool the authorities into confusing them. So, for example, something that the authorities are worried about is that everybody's going to start growing hemp. There's going to be cannabis growing everywhere, and then they're just going to be overwhelmed by all of these five-finger leaves and unable to tell the difference of what's hemp and what's marijuana. So, that's a concern that they have. But Steve King also mentioned some other things, which are just that maybe we're not ready yet to do this. He said we're not ready, and the truth is he was shot down multiple times by multiple Congress members on the floor that night, and he ended up resorting to just making jokes about things. My favorite line was when he said that what happens if the marijuana growers start making glow-in-the-dark marijuana, and then we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And taken out of context, it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, John Stewart would have a field day.
Exactly. But the truth is, though, that he was shot down. His things were not valid. It did not pass. But we do still have opposition from mostly law enforcement agencies that are concerned that the testing that they say essentially we are already strained. We are already working around the clock to they're still, of course, eradicating marijuana. And they think that this will just make their job harder. And the biggest way to combat that is really to say, look, we understand you have concerns. We understand that, this looks like we're going to have to train you on how to distinguish between hemp and marijuana. But this is certainly not impossible. The rest of the world is already doing this, the rest of the developed world. Middle East, the rest of the world. Canada has been doing this for over 15 years, and they've never had problems with it. So we don't see why we can't do it if they can do it. And but the other thing is that, you know, law enforcement has been opposed to hemp for years, but never have we needed to create jobs. And we really bring it back to the jobs that hemp will create. You know, while law enforcement might have concerns, you know, we really have to weigh the cost-benefit analysis. And while the law enforcement said the cost-benefit analysis is this is too risky, we're saying actually we need to create these jobs, and we can see them creating jobs in Canada. And we just want to be able to create jobs in this fast-growing industry.
Okay. And so what can our audience do to help you on Capitol Hill end the federal prohibition of industrial hemp and then make it, like everything else, a states' rights issue so the individual states can go ahead and put seed in the ground? How can our audience help you?
Absolutely. Well, I work for Vote Hemp, and so if you go to votehemp.com, there's a lot of information, but there's also an action alert. So you just click. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. So we're always posting articles and news. There's always hemp news across the country every day that's coming up, and so it's great to see that. And we also put out action alerts, so it's really easy just to, you know, if you click take action, and you can send a letter, or what's even more important than sending a letter is making a call to your congressional office. And it's really easy. All you have to do is you just call, you dial the number. There's a script, actually a talking script, and you just do that, and that really makes a really big impact. So that's something you can do. But bringing this up also, if there's any other organizations that you work with, or any other working groups, or if you have any friends, just getting people involved, because this is a grassroots movement that we need not only your own support, but we're also working on getting organizations to sign on to this. You know, local farm bureaus and local SOBS organizations, local nonprofits. But also, we are actually working on, you know, just really reaching out to anybody. Because hemp is something that is important, but people don't always hear about that. So right now, we're actually trying to pressure local agriculture commissioners and local attorney generals to really see this as a way to create jobs. You know, everybody's goal is to create jobs, and we want to make sure they know that hemp is a way to create jobs.
And this would also mean contacting your state senators, because as you say, you've got these 20 states have passed some form of either legislation or letters supporting what you're doing. So contacting their state level folks would be important also, correct?
Exactly, yeah. Like I said, a number of states have already passed legislation, but that legislation can be stronger. A number of other states need to introduce legislation. Tennessee is the most recent state. They just introduced legislation just last week, or I think it was just last week. And but we certainly want more states. Minnesota, I know, is a place where Minnesota has introduced legislation over a dozen times, pretty much every year for the past 12 years. But they've never been able to pass the legislation that they want to pass. And so in some states, it's important just to contact your local representatives to tell them to support them on the state level.
Ben, thank you so much for your time and expertise on this. Of course, we see each other quite often in the halls of Congress, since we wear out our boot leather and whatnot, walking up and down the halls, talking to members and their staff. Any final thoughts?
Just final thoughts are, you know, this is a movement. It's a grassroots movement. It's really dependent and reliant on the listeners, on the people that are just in different places around the country, and it really is a team effort. And so I'm really hoping that I'm really excited about everything that's happening. But it's not just going to happen on its own. So we really do need, I'm constantly calling my congressperson, to tell them to support this. It really does take your efforts and your work and your outreach efforts to really make this team effort possible.
Okay. Well, thanks, Ben. Take care. See you soon on Capitol Hill.
Thank you so much, Howard. And I'll see you on Capitol Hill. Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to medical marijuana, I have more of a practical view than anything else. I mean, my attitude is that if it's an issue of doctors prescribing medical marijuana as a treatment for glaucoma or as a cancer treatment, I think that should be appropriate, because there really is no difference between that and a doctor prescribing morphine or anything else. I think there are legitimate concerns in not wanting to allow people to grow their own or start setting up mom and pop shops, because at that point it becomes fairly difficult to regulate. And again, I'm not familiar with all the details of the initiative that was passed and what safeguards there were in place, but I think the basic concept that using medical marijuana in the same way with the same controls as other drugs prescribed by doctors, I think that's entirely appropriate.
This may sound strange, but I want to pay taxes. See, I don't drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes. I relax with something science has proven is much safer, marijuana. And I want to buy it somewhere that charges taxes to pay for schools and roads, just like alcohol and tobacco. What do you think should profit? Are schools and roads or drug dealers?
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.
Norma, are you there?
I am. How about you?
I'm so happy that you came. I've got to introduce you to our audience by telling a little story of how we met. 10 years ago, my first rodeo as a lobbyist advocate was for NORML back in Austin, Texas. And I tried so hard to get this marijuana bill through at least the committee level. And at the end of 4.5 months, I was not successful. In fact, we did not even get a vote in the committee. And then I read in the paper up in Oklahoma City, in Oklahoma is substantially more conservative than Texas, that this bill, this marijuana bill, had actually passed through the Oklahoma Senate. And I said, holy mother of God, how could a bill pass through Oklahoma and I go nowhere in Texas? So I had to meet the genius, the absolute genius, who figured out a way to get a marijuana bill through the Oklahoma Senate. And her name was Norma Sapp, living near Norman, south of town. And so we met over dinner, and I'm trying to pick her brain. How did you do this? What genius things did you do or say, talking points? Tell me, how did you do this? And if I can condense it down, you said, basically, you've got to do a lot of legwork, you got to meet people, and you got to do it for years and years, developing relationships. And that's how I met Norma Sapp, my last guest, who's essentially the executive director of NORML in Oklahoma?
Right, state director. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Norma, so is that about accurate how we met? When you made this, you were able to get this bill through the Senate in Oklahoma?
We did meet that way, and it was after something like that, and it still wasn't successful, even though I got it one step of the way. Uh-huh. And that little trail right there is you just try and you get half step, and sometimes you can get a pat on the back for getting that half step, but we still haven't done it, have we?
No, we haven't. And even as the issue advances in other states and at the federal level now, as everyone has said, there's still lots of political work to do to move this terrible policy into the history books. Let me just say, I would characterize you as the ultimate citizen lobbyist. How did you actually get involved in marijuana policy with NORML, and then what drove you, what pushed you, what pulled you to become a woman on a mission up and down the hallways of the Oklahoma legislature?
Actually, a friend of mine found this paper at the university. OU's close to my home, and she brought it to me. And each one of the things that were mentioned on there, like the history of hemp and George Washington using it and all, they were all cited. Where he got that documentation. And I read that. It was by Chris and Mickey Norris. And I said, wow, if this is all true, then it's so easy. I just got to tell all the farmers about this. And so I started holding, down at my local cafe, I would hold I'll buy your breakfast if you'll watch this little film. That's the kind of thing I did at first. And then eventually I worked through the Capitol and drove back and forth there every day and tried to convince those people. And there was a few people that didn't need convincing that the war was the wrong way to go, but mostly they act like you're some kind of nut, and they hang a placard over your picture, saying, "This is Satan." But I worked through it anyway, and I found some friends along the way, and I still am going to all of their meetings and trying to be involved and show them that I am more than just a marijuana activist. I've probably joined every group there is in Oklahoma to join, and I still do those kinds of community efforts to make sure that people know that I'm a real community activist, and this is one of my issues, and I'm going to stick to it, and I'm going to tell everybody the truth. And that's so true. I mean, I've been doing this for 17 years, and I too, in my naivete, thought, well, heck, the facts are so clear that prohibition is a failure. So just present the facts to the people and the politicians, and they'll obviously make the right decision to end this policy, which gets our kids killed as the drug dealers and, all the other ills of the policy. And, of course, no, that's not how politics works. It's not education. In fact, we'll get your opinion on this. I believe that the education phase of this movement is essentially over, that we don't need to bring out the facts over and over again about how badly this policy is hurting all segments of society, both financially and socially, morally, people dying because of the policy. It's now a question of just straightforward political will, the political muscle to change politicians' position or just change the whole politician. Does that sound right to you? Well, it may be in Washington, D.C., but there are still ignorant minds here in Oklahoma. And when you try to tell them some of the truth, that they really do believe the stuff that they find on the ONDC's website, and our Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, too, has cut and pasted that stuff onto their website. And even a young man that I knew when he first started working at the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics has, I don't know, somehow been brainwashed to believe all that. And I kind of know how it happens to the police. When you see the kind of horrible things that you see every day, especially when there's children involved, your mind gets jaded. You think that all people who use drugs are those examples. And it isn't so, because they don't see the regular go-to-work everyday people that use marijuana in the evening or on the weekends. And so they don't know of those people, and so they do get jaded, and they do hate the situation, especially with the methamphetamine situation in Oklahoma. And I think that's how they lump it all into one spot. They don't separate marijuana from the other drugs. But I'm going to keep on trying to educate them, and thank God we have other countries that are doing good research, and I can take those papers to the people that will listen.
Well, thank you for that perspective, because it is a problem. I've been now inside the Beltway, a Washington insider, if you will, for going on 8 years, and it's a big country, and as you say, I stand corrected. There is some education needs to be done. I will certainly concur with you on the police perspective, because we go to cases where the phone at 911 rings, and it's always a problem. We never go to a home where someone is using drugs of any kind responsibly. So, yeah, the police get a distorted view of saying, because every time they go to a call involving drug A, B, or C, it's always because the drug was used to excess, the person's an addict, and then everything went downhill from there. So, yeah, that is a problem for police officers to try to keep in perspective the 100 houses they go by before they actually get to a house with a problem. Tell me more about when you develop these relationships, because I'm sure there's some people out in the audience who would like to go to their legislature for a day, a week, during the session, whatever. What advice would you give them in terms of what to do with if they've got a day, or if they've got a week, or if they've got a month or two? What can you tell them would be the best way to proceed?
Well, if they just want to spend some time, like take their vacation time and go to the Capitol, then, yeah, just take your time, meet everybody you can, knock on each door, especially your legislators. But if you really want to become an activist, then you first start with your political party, if it's Democrat or Republican or whatever. Join that county party first, and then work your way up to the state party and help with elections. Question the people that are running. Ask them what their opinion is of, X, Y, Z, whatever your things that you're trying to accomplish. And while you're at it, you meet all these other wonderful people that are involved in the party, and you get to educate all of them, with your issues. And not that those people really need to be educated here in Oklahoma. I think that pretty much the people already know the truth. It's just the legislators who are not listening to the same news or reading the same books we do. I don't know. But anyway, so get involved at the local level and volunteer for some things. And like I said, go volunteer for some campaigns. And in a few years, once you have helped somebody get into office, they will remember you. And when you go knock on their door and say, I have a problem with this issue, they will listen.
So it boils back to what you told me on the first evening over dinner, develop relationships.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and then I've taken your advice, and first off, I calm down saying, okay, you're not going to do this in a week, a month, a day, or a year. This is a multi-year effort. How many years have you been going to the Capitol in Oklahoma City?
I was counting on my fingers a while ago, and it was 23.
Oh, you ran out of fingers and toes.
I did.
Well, I know of some of your accomplishments, and people might say, well, I'm from Alabama. I can never get a bill passed. It's not going to happen. So why even try? But I know you've had some success, not just in passing a bill through the Senate, but you've actually helped kill some bad paragraphs in some bad bills. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, that was our second line of defense. We couldn't get them to do the things that we wanted to do, but we could pay attention to what they were doing and try to enlighten them. For instance, there was a tobacco settlement thing that was coming due to us, and the legislature wrote a bill that would spend that money. But inside that bill, and this became illegal eventually, was a second subject, and it had to do with it was prohibiting candy cigarettes and candy cigars and the advertising on T-shirts and other apparel. And so I went through that committee meeting, and as the senator was trying to, lower the gavel and say the meeting was over, I said, wait, I know what the main subject of this bill is, but here on this bottom line here, it says what I can eat and what I can wear. And he didn't seem to care. He said, I'll go to another state, and he lowered the gavel. Well, later on the news, he was interviewed about that, and he actually complained that in that bill, it's telling people what they can wear and what they can eat.
There you go.
So I called the company that made the candy cigarettes, and we got them to come up and help with lobbying against it. And finally, took that part out of the bill. And according to the law now, you cannot have more than one subject in a bill. So I accomplished that. Right. And when we had the problem of, back in the early 90s, there was a lot of problems with taking people's land. When people would sneak onto the back 40 that you don't never go down there and look at and plant marijuana, they would take all of your land and put you in jail. And so I knocked on every door in our legislature to try to inform them of that. There was one man that took a bill that had been requested by law enforcement and added an amendment at the very last minute. So they wanted to pass it. They had to pass it with that amendment. and it would give you a defense. If you didn't know anything about that property back there where people grew up the marijuana, and you didn't know that they did it, then you had a defense to stay out of jail. It did not save you from forfeiture, but it at least kept you out of prison, because I saw two 60-something-year-old people go to federal penitentiaries in different states effectively for a life sentence because they were given 10 years in a prison. Sure. And so he listened to me, and he believed me, and he got that amendment put in there, and it's been the law ever since that if you have homestead exemption on your property here, they will not seize your property.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize to our listeners that is the type of action that you can take locally to help people in general. Norma has been successful in killing that bad paragraph or adding a sentence or two to make the bill not quite so bad. And she has been successful in Oklahoma, ladies and gentlemen. I can't think of a much more conservative state for any politics, for that matter. And that should give the audience confidence to go forward. And of course, one, like you do, you read the bill, the whole thing, and you go, oh my gosh, this paragraph 1-6 or A6 is really bad. And there are enough people who will listen to you in the state legislatures to actually have an impact. But I want to go back to the reason that you can go into those offices is about relationships. Can you tell us more about how you developed them, what techniques you used, or was it was just a matter of time, or whatever else? Something about telling the truth all the time?
On the internet, especially now, not so easily in the 60s, but in the 90s, on the internet now, it gives a history of what that legislator is involved in, what community groups he belongs to, Rotaries, and that kind of thing, where he went to school, if he has children, and you can go and join those same groups that he belongs to and be a member there. And I really recommend that. If you have a local Rotary that your legislator goes to, go be a member and show him, join his, whatever his passion is. If he has a passion for a food pantry in your area, then join that food pantry and help him out. Once he gets to know you as a real person, when you speak, he'll listen.
There you go.
If you just go in and say, this is my opinion about marijuana, he's going to turn you off completely. But first meet him in another fashion so that he knows you as a person that he respects.
Yeah, and that's been my experience here in Capitol Hill. I've been here 8 years. Now when I meet with a staffer, like I met with a staffer yesterday, it was my 4th meeting with her. We've known each other now 6 years, and she knows that when I give her information, that she will maybe perhaps double-check it, but she knows when I give her information about, say, the Department of Justice and drug gangs across America, she doesn't really need to double-check it, because every time she reads something that I've given her, she knows it's the simple truth, not exaggerated. That is important, correct?
Yes, yeah. It is, very much.
And I can't emphasize enough that it's that building that relationship that you've done so well in Oklahoma has allowed you to go into those offices and say, hey, this is Norma Sapp. I've been here for the last, as you say, 23 years. They trust you because you give them good information. You give them good, sound stats, no exaggeration. And so when you say this is a really bad paragraph, they listen. And I congratulate you and all your hard work. And it goes back a little bit to what was being said earlier by Eric Sterling, that this is the type of, if you don't have the time, if you're busy at your job and you got kids to raise, but you got a few bucks, this is the type of advocate that, gas money. For you, it's like about an 80-mile round trip to the Capitol. That takes tires, it takes gas. You wear out a car. That's when you need to support the people who do these things in your state, your area, your country, because it doesn't get done for free. I mean, I know Norma. She didn't win the lottery, and she struggles every day to work and put food on the table, and also do her activism. So financial support is always appreciated by those of us who go and take on the dragon at the state legislature.
Yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I am amazed that God puts that thought into people's minds almost every day, and people do send me money in the mail. It's amazing. And that $20 really does help, and it's a 90-mile round trip.
That's 90 miles, okay. Yeah, another half a gallon of gas to get there.
That's right.
Well, you besides the state legislature, Norma, shifting gears a little bit, you live in an unincorporated part of you live actually in the city of Norman, but just across the street, as I recall, is the unincorporated part of the county. So if you're living in Norman, like you do, what are some of the things you can do at the local level for activism to move the marijuana issue forward? I know the Marijuana Majority, that new Tom Angel organization, has requested everybody in America ask their mayor how they feel about legalized marijuana. How would you go about that at the city level? And what would you do if you were on the other side of the street in the unincorporated county? Who would you contact, and what types of legislation, what types of bills, ordinances could an activist work on?
Well, if you want to go specifically for that, there is a public comment section on every city council meeting. Every week, your city council will meet, and at the end or sometimes at the beginning, they'll allow the public to speak about something that's not on the agenda. That's a good time to bring that up. If you want to be on the agenda with a particular paper or something that you want to say, you have to apply a week beforehand to get on the agenda. But what I did, I think that made more sense, and I actually did the city council thing a couple of times, but what I did was a couple of years back, we had a new sheriff running, and I went to every thing that he went to speak that I could find listed anywhere on his website or in the paper or whatever. I went to that thing, and I asked the good questions in front of the other public members. And by golly, he remembers me. He remembers me. I didn't embarrass him or anything like that. I just brought up good things that he should think about. And just the other day, I had an issue in my neighborhood, and I left a message on his office phone, and he called me back the next day, and he says, "Here, Norma, take my cell phone number." And so, we have that kind of a personal relationship now because I put the time in.
There you go. I can't emphasize this enough, ladies and gentlemen. It's developing that personal relationship that's going to open the doors and open the ears of the elected officials and other government functionaries to move our point of view from outside to inside the main thinking. And we see that now with victory after victory. 20 states now with medical marijuana. And as Ethan said, by the end of 14, or certainly by the end of 16, we're going to have a whole lot more folks, a whole lot more states on board with this because of the decision. So, the fact that we had a great victory yesterday is all the more reason to work as hard as you did the day before, because there's still a long ways to go in this thing. Norma, is there for Oklahoma, is there any hope, speaking of the future?
I think so. I think we'll be swept up with the rest of the states. I mean, Texas has already liberalized, like decriminalized almost. And then we've got Colorado that touches the panhandle. And Arkansas, I think, is going to be voting on a medical bill here pretty soon. And then all those other states to the west of us that have medical. So I think we'll just kind of get swept along with the wave.
Well, that would be wonderful for the residents of Oklahoma. And certainly the money pressures are helping at every level.
Oh, yeah. If we could empty out some of our prisons that are so overcrowded, everybody's very aware of that.
Yeah, and I would emphasize my experience on Capitol Hill as an advocate, lobbyist, is that when you're talking especially to a Republican, talk about the money. Yeah. The money it costs to put a person in jail. Even Grover Norquist, the renowned anti-tax guy here in Washington, is on our side on this issue. And when he testifies before the Congress, he always talks about the money wasted to put somebody in jail for $55 to $65 a day. And for what reason? He had 100 pounds of marijuana. Is that where you want your tax dollars to go? And so, when my experience is talking to Republicans, lead with money, the money we don't have, and how we need money for education or other issues. And then I would say for me, my experience, Democrats are more likely to be persuaded by the human cost as opposed to the financial cost.
Exactly.
What's your experience with that, Norma?
That's exactly the way the things are rounding up around here. I spoke with, I can't say his name. I spoke with a man yesterday that was directly tied to the prison, and that's his conscience, too. He resigned because he can't stand what we're doing to all the people in there.
Sure. Yeah. This part of this global effort is not talking about the actual problems, but certainly we can't get away from the fact that because of prohibition, in America, we have close to 2 million people in prison because of prohibition of all drugs. And the policy itself is just hurting so many people on so many levels. But moving that issue is political muscle. We've got to be able to elect people who agree with us. And we've seen the growing support for that politically, like the Ron Paul campaign of 2012 was twice as strong as Ron Paul in 2008. So
yes.
And he was an anti-prohibition guy.
Right, it's getting there.
It's getting there, and that's where we need to tell our politicians, as often as is reasonable, that we need to move away from this prohibition model and have the government control it. And your suggestions of going to these meetings to get to know these politicians, the sheriff, whatever else, it does pay dividends. It does bear fruit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Well, we've got a few minutes left. What other methods or what other ideas do you have to share with our audience in terms of moving the issue forward at the local, county, state level? Anything else we haven't talked about yet?
Now, if you are one of those people that, when you get home from work, you've got to take your kids to the ball game, and then you've got laundry and dinner afterwards, and you don't have time to go to those meetings, like you said, donate to somebody who is, and at least do emails. Emails and phone calls to your congresspeople and to your state legislators, they really do matter. And I really like printing out a letter that I want and mailing it to my state legislators.
By the way, let me just say more at the federal level that you can go to the local office of your United States Senator or United States Congressman, and I'll bet members of Parliament and other countries, they have a local office where you can talk to a legislative aide who then reports to the politician. So you can have contact with your federal, even though Washington may be thousands of miles or kilometers away, your capital, you can have contact with an aide to your member of Congress. And it does count. So you, as a citizen lobbyist, excuse me, like Norma, can meet with a person who has a direct phone line to the member of Congress back in Washington, D.C. And this gives you an opportunity to, one, give this person your unprofessional but enthusiastic and passionate point of view as to why we need to change the policy. This is something that all of us can do and we all should do. And then, the Norma as a citizen, a lobbyist, and myself as a professional, when we go in, yes, we have all the talking points, and we do this for a living. However, I would say that a regular person who's non-professional walking through the door is going to have make as good an impression and a powerful statement as we do.
Well, actually, we're down to 1 minute. We're down to 1 minute, and that's just an excellent way to close it. I want to thank you so much for being part of the big broadcast today. This was a very special 2-hour summit, and I hope you go to the website to download all of the segments and share them with your friends and let everybody know that you heard about them here on Time for Hemp.
This is a message of a world in war. This is a message of a world in pain. This is a message to our global leaders. This is a message, a cry out for freedom. This is a message of a world in war. This is a message of a world in pain. This is a message to our global leaders. This is a message, a cry out for freedom fighters. What we require, souls on fire. require. Rebels fire.
What are we doing with a word like this? The act of Noah was already a sign, a warning of Jah, destroy them evil minds. Jah, don't let it happen again. We already got us a second chance. We have to take it with the lights in our hands. We only live once, we must make it better. Global freedom and peace is the answer.
This is a message of a world in war. This is a message of a world in pain. This is a message to our global leaders. This is a message, a cry out for freedom. This is a message of a world in war. This is a message of a world in pain. This is a message to our global leaders. This is a message, a cry out for freedom. Fighters, what we require. Souls on fire.
More fire, more fire, more fire.
Freedom fighters, what we require. Rebels fire.
More fire, more fire, more fire.
We have to stop the killing and fighting. All over the world people are dying. Children are hungry and always crying. Oh Mama Africa. Some people over the world searching for solution, but Diablo is showing the cross of the war. While using bombs and bullets wasted for self-destruction of our own human species.
This is a message of a world in war. This is a message of a world in pain. This is a message to our global leaders. This is a message, a cry out for freedom. This is a message of a world in war. This is a message of a world in pain. This is a message to our global leaders. This is a message, a cry out for freedom. Fighters, what we require. Souls on fire.
More fire, more fire, more fire.
Freedom fighters, what we require. Rebels fire.
More fire, more fire, more fire.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for him.